want to say thank you so much for everyone for organizing this. It's a real honor, it's a real privilege. General Huda, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Alim. I'm Chief Operating Officer of the All India Professionals Congress. I'm in charge of national operations. I work directly for the chairman. I come from a military family. My grandfather and his two brothers, Army, Air Force, Navy. One of them, unfortunately, was killed in action. So I, maintain very good relationships with all with my regimental family as well. So it's a real privilege to have you all here.
No, my pleasure. Yeah, great.
And sir, I am also, I've been asked by our chairman, Dr. Tharoor, who unfortunately could not make it for this, to make detailed notes and give it to him because he would like to get in touch with you subsequently on a separate matter privately. So I will definitely.
Okay.
Thank you. So how are we all doing in Delhi? I know the situation is very bad with the COVID. I saw that there's a meeting that happened today with Home Minister and so on and so forth, but I hope everyone is keeping safe.
As well as we can in these times, Alim. But I think it's great to be able to bring these experts on board for detailed conversations. So we are hoping as soon as Salman joins us, I think we can begin in about a minute or two from now.
Sure. I'm just gonna call someone.
Okay. And I'm requesting all the attendees to please ask the question in the chat box so we can the speaker can answer.
Salman ji's joined us.
I think we should start now, right?
Yes. Avni?
Yes, Prakhar is also here. I think it's sharp 7 o'clock. And Salman, can you hear us and see us clearly? Let's check with Salman quickly.
I can hear you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Salman. So Prakhar, over to you and let's start officially.
Am I audible, Avni?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So I invite now Avni. Avni happens to be an alum of Harvard and Cambridge. She's also part of secretary of Delhi AIPC. So not making fuss about it, I am Prakhar Dixit. I am also practicing in Supreme Court. Welcome you all above, specifically all the speakers. Most welcome to the panel and on a topic which is very contemporary and very heated. I hope we can actually take back home something. So welcome, Avni. Please take it over from me.
Thanks, Prakhar. Thanks very much. A very good evening to everybody, and thank you for tuning in to all the panelists, to everybody who's watching here on Zoom, and to everybody who's watching us either on Facebook Live or All India Professionals Congress Delhi page, or also on the page of National Herald on their Facebook Live page. Thanks very much. The purpose for today's event is simple. It is that let us bring the experts, the people who are best placed to speak on this subject, to come and explain to us, to demystify for us this long-standing India-China issue. All India Professionals Congress is a brainchild of Dr. Shashi Tharoor, and the idea is to create a platform where we can bring people and have a rich conversation on a variety of issues facing our country. We have amongst us Mr. Yogesh Sachdeva, who is the President of All India Professionals Congress Delhi. We have with us Ms. Shamli Prakash, who is the Vice President of All India Professionals Congress Delhi, and I'm the Secretary All India Professionals Congress Delhi. I will be sharing a quick link on the chat box for everybody so that if you want to join our team, we welcome you. Please come and join us as Professionals for Change. We have amongst us Alim Javedi, who is the CEO of All India Professionals Congress India, and Mr. Salman Soz, a noted economist, an author, and also the Deputy Chairperson for All India Professionals Congress India. I request Alim and then Salman to, in that order, please share their quick remarks, and then we hand over to Anuma for the moderated session for today. Over to you, Alim, and then request Mr. Salman to share your brief comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Avni. Really appreciate it. General Huda, Wing Commander Acharya, Colonel Singh, it's a real honor and a privilege to have you join us today. First and foremost, we thank you for your service. We thank you for your dedication and all that you've done for us. Today is a very important conversation. It's a conversation that's about something that's been an ongoing issue since as early as the independence of India, our situation along the border. In one of my other avatars, in one of my other jobs, I was lucky enough to accompany our chairman, Dr. Tharoor, in his capacity as the chairman of this Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs, to the furthest part of the Indian side during the Doklam crisis. I've had the privilege of meeting various representatives from various units located in that area. And this committee that Parliament has is a bicameral, bipartisan committee. So you have members of Parliament from both houses and all political parties, and all of them agreed. The one thing that is absolutely important to remember is the service and the professionalism of our servicemen and women. And we have seen this firsthand by going to these areas and seeing the kind of conditions that our soldiers have to work in and have to live in. So first and foremost, to them, we want to say thank you. Second thing I'd like to just put forward is the AIPC is a department of the Indian National Congress for professionals, for working, tax-paying professionals. What we're trying to do here is have a conversation without the reductionist approach that is being taken by certain sections of the media. That reduction, unfortunately, comes at the cost of nuance. It comes at the cost of detail. Geopolitics requires all the nuance and detail it can get, because those details is where you are able to find treaties and solutions. The us versus them argument being peddled by certain sections of our media is perhaps the single biggest threat, in my opinion, to the larger situation in our country. Finally, I just want to put forward one thought, and I'd like very much to get the thoughts of our various panelists to discuss whenever they get to it in their conversation today. When we were there in the Northeast, one of the things we saw firsthand was the varying number of units, stakeholders who are operating in a sector. You have everyone from the Home Ministry to the Defense Ministry, the various branches of the services, civilian and non-civilian people all working together. One of the things that we wanted to know from you is how does our coordination across these various units work, and how can that coordination be improved? Does it need to be improved? And how can we as citizens do our best to ensure that the conditions of our servicemen and women is improved in the areas in which they're operating? Finally, once again, thank you very much. I think I've taken more than enough time. Over to you, Avni.
Thanks very much, Alim. I agree with you, and I would say a big salute to everybody who is in the 4G family as we battle COVID-19. Families of the 4G people are still, praying for not just the lives of all of us, but for their men and women, who are out there helping us with this crisis. Over to you, Salman. Request you to please share your brief opening remarks.
Thank you, Avni. Thank you, AIPC Delhi and AIPC Delhi North for organizing this very important event. Greetings to General Huda, one of the most enlightened voices from the military. Thank you for joining us at our platform. Thank you, Colonel Shailendra Singh, for joining us. I look forward to this discussion. And of course, we have Wing Commander Anuma Acharya, who's one of our office bearers as well. I think this is going to be a very interesting discussion. There's much for all of us to learn. I will watch you, General Huda, as a student in some ways, but also I think many people may not know. I mean, for us Kashmiris, you've always been a very friendly voice and a reasonable voice. A kind of voice that really is needed for integration. So I welcome you, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on the current crisis with China, and ultimately what are the kinds of options we have, what are the kinds of things we should be thinking about for the future, without any kind of political kind of twist to it, just the basics that we should learn from. Thank you so much for coming.
So let me now introduce Wing Commander Anuma Acharya. She's a veteran of the forces. She's now part of our AIPC team. She's the Vice President of AIPC North Delhi, and I now welcome her to moderate the session.
Thank you, Prakhar. Thank you, Salman. And good evening all. Let me take the privilege of introducing highly revered Lieutenant General D.S. Huda, Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Uttam Yuddha Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Vishisht Seva Medal Bar, that means he was awarded Vishisht Seva Medal twice, who has graciously accepted our invitation to discuss the recent standoff between India and China. General Huda was the Northern Army commander during the surgical strike in September 2016. With a career spanning nearly 40 years, he has served on both the northern and eastern borders of India. Sir has also served on the United Nations mission in Ethiopia and Eritrea. for which he was awarded the UNMEE medal. We are extremely proud and privileged to have you with us, sir, today. To moderate today's discussion, we have Colonel Shailendra Singh with us. He is an artillery officer from a PEC regiment to the 1st Bofors Regiment, and he too has served on both the northern and eastern sector. I had an opportunity to be an immediate colleague to Colonel Shailendra Singh in a national Hindi news channel for a short stint, and ever since we remain connected. कर्नल शैलेंद्र सिंह के बारे में खास बात यह है कि वो हिंदुस्तानी के साथ साथ पाकिस्तानी चैनल्स में भी दिखते हैं और बहुत स्पॉन्टेनियसली अपनी वार्म जय हिंद के जवाब में पाकिस्तानी एंकर से जय हिंद बुलवा लेते हैं और अनएडिटेड एयर हो जाता है. So now I request and invite Colonel Shailendra Singh to take the discussion forward. Question answer हम पूरे डिस्कशन के बाद में लेंगे.
Jai Hind everybody. Jai Hind everybody. Jai Hind, General Huda sir. It's really a proud privilege for me now to be reconnected with you after such a long time. I can only tell you that Anuma, I think, found it very easy to introduce you. It's a very difficult job for anybody to introduce you because the kind of checkered career you have had, the kind of exposure you have had, the kind of guidance you have given to Indian Army, it's unparalleled. It's unparalleled to any limit, any extent. Having said so, sir, will not take much time. I have to also thank the professional Congress. Sir, I'm only putting additional responsibility towards you that please take on these professionals. Good for us because both you and me are the professional from the military side to explain in a very layman language as well as very easy language so that they understand everything. And sir, pardon me, थोड़ी सी English कमजोर है. मैं चाहूँगा सर आप मुझे बीच-बीच में थोड़ा हिंदी में भी समझा दें so that the things become very clear to me. Why? Not because only English कमजोर है. थोड़ा सा देश की language में बात करने में फक्र महसूस होता है. Not wasting time, sir. Please allow me to put first question to you. Sir, I hope मेरी country safe है. I really hope, sir, मेरी country safe है दोनों borders पर. जिन दो borders की बात, जो double borders की बात chief कहते आए हैं कि we have to be ready. I only hope, sir, it is that we are safe from war capability as well as capacity. General Huda, sir.
Thank you very much, Shailendra. Salman, thank you very much, and thank you all for inviting me. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. Let me just straight away jump in to your first question, and the short answer is yes, we are safe. And I know it sounds strange coming at a time when we feel that there is a big crisis which is happening in Ladakh between India and China with troops locked in a standoff. But I think we can't transpose this situation and look at our overall capability and get a sense that the overall capability, military capability is weak, or that we are not going to be able to defend our borders. I think we are. I mean, and that would be a completely wrong impression. Crises on the border of the kind that we are seeing today and which have happened fairly regularly in the past are completely different from when you talk about, a war waging capability, for example, because that's when your complete military potential, which includes your army, the air force, the navy, which is very strong in the Indian Ocean, all that comes into play. Obviously, we would like, the military capability to be enhanced. We are facing two fairly strong neighbors. Pakistan on one side has a reasonably strong military, although their economy may not be good. China, which is to our north, is almost a great power and great economy. Their defense budget and their modernization is extremely, extremely impressive. So obviously, we would like more, and we would like our capability to grow. And I'll talk about this a little later of how we should do it. But let's not get a feel that today we are in such a situation that we are not going to be able to hold our own, or the borders are, sort of porous and weak, and that the Indian military cannot hold it on.
Great, sir. So I take it, sir, from our respected army commander saying that our borders are safe. I'm very sure it has to be safe. My next question, sir. Sir, we have been hearing, it's not the first time, but we have been hearing traditionally when even I was in army, I was also facing an odd situation here and there. Sir, since 47, has incursions by China specific, now I am asking first, has incursions from China never been there, or has it always been there? And if at all, I can only ask you if there has been any incursions earlier since our independence. Have we ever lost real estate on ground? And if at all we have lost, what could have been the reason to it? You have seen it for 40 years, sir. I'm sure you will have the correct answer for that.
Okay, Shailendra, so very quick dive into history, which everybody knows. And I think the defining moment as far as our northern borders is concerned was the 1962 war. And in the 1962 war, major territorial loss took place in Ladakh. They did come into also across the, what we now call the line of actual control in the eastern sector, but they went back across the LAC.
So they went back from, may I take it, sir, Bhalukpong? I think General Hooda sir's connection has gone somewhere. Can the technical backup team look after that?
A little network issue at General Hooda's side. Just a second. He's coming.
Okay. Okay, we'll wait. Doesn't make difference. But let me tell you what sir is actually, let me explain a little bit on that, what sir is saying. What sir said that yes, at that time we did lose territory. And if I can very correctly specify it, in Arunachal, they came up to Bhalukpong. And then they returned back. That is the reference what he is giving, and which is a solid distance in terms of, real estate, if at all I have to call. But then they went back.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, sir. I can hear you now. Please.
So what was the boundary came to be defined or known as the line of actual control, which basically meant which side has actually control over which territory. And therefore, as far as the LAC is concerned, areas to the west, we consider in our area, and areas to the east are considered in Chinese territory. Unfortunately, there was no agreement on the two sides on ground or on maps to define this is how the LAC lies. And therefore, there are differing perceptions in certain areas. We feel this area is under our control. They feel this area is under their control. But these, let me tell you, are very small pockets along the whole border, starting from Ladakh to Arunachal Pradesh. There are about 20, 23 places, small pockets where disputes take place. There is also a feeling that, over the last 30, 40, 50 years, the Chinese have been regularly transgressing across and slowly nibbling away at Indian territory, and therefore slowly territory is being lost to them. I think there are no facts to support it. Please look after 1962. We had 1967 Nathula incident, where we did not permit them to come in at all. In 86, we had the Sumdrongchu incident, where they tried to come in, and there was massive deployment by the Indian military and the Indian Army in an operation called Operation Falcon. So therefore, we have been defending our borders strongly. There has been a little problem with regard to infrastructure, because our road building and roads in the forward areas were poor, and therefore we were not able to patrol up to every place that we wanted to. That situation too has changed. And it is because of this situation that you are seeing an increase in transgressions in the last few years. Our ability to check Chinese who are trying to come into these disputed pockets has improved. Our surveillance over our borders has improved. And it's because of this that you find the number of transgressions that are being reported are increasing. What are these transgressions? These transgressions are when Chinese patrols come across what we consider our LAC and come into our area, we say it's a transgression. Similarly, when we cross over the LAC that the Chinese consider as their LAC and go on their side, they say you are transgressing into our area. And therefore, these transgressions are happening in a few selected pockets, both in the Ladakh area and also Sikkim and in Arunachal Pradesh. But, cutting it to the quick, let me say this whole story about that we have been constantly losing territory to the PLA and to the Chinese, and that we've been falling back on the borders. Let me tell you, this is not true. The borders are being defended, being patrolled, and wherever we feel that there is an issue, you've seen Depsang, Chumar, Doklam, the army has responded strongly.
Great, sir. Sir, as a youngster to you, yes, Hanuma, you wanted to ask something.
Sir, this LAC is neither delineated nor it is demarcated. इतने साल हो गए हैं तो ऐसा क्यों है? ये by choice है क्यों इसका एक proper map, approved map नहीं है sir?
नहीं, so कोशिश हुई है in the past. It is not that we have not agreed, and both India and China ने कहा था कि it's important to delineate the LAC, because the minute that LAC is delineated, this whole issue of intrusions will go away. Everybody will know where the line is and which is the area that they should not overstep. Unfortunately, there was an exercise to exchange maps, giving perceptions of both sides. वो UP Tibet sector में हुआ था exchange of maps, but eastern sector and western sector जो बोलते हैं लद्दाख और अरुणाचल प्रदेश में, I think the differences are too much, and therefore we could not come to any kind of a conclusion. So it is India's viewpoint, and that has been expressed constantly, including during the last visit of Prime Minister Modi to China, that there is a need to demarcate the LAC. If there is a reluctance, it is honestly from the Chinese side, and that gives rise to some suspicions about whether they want to solve this whole problem, or are they just keeping it as a pressure point at some time. But if the LAC can be delineated, I think half the problems that we are having on the borders will go away.
Oh, great, sir. Sir, I as a youngster to you, may I ask, when you defined LAC, line of actual control, so well, why it is? ये मेरे को sir अभी से नहीं, because I have luckily served in Arunachal, I have served in Sikkim, I have also served in Ladakh, and everywhere I was always finding it very funny for myself as a youngster कि ये सभी जगह पर LAC का जो कंट्रोल है वो चाइना ही क्यों incursion और ट्रांसग्रेशन करता है? Why are we not? और जब भी कभी करता है, it comes as a problem to all of us for so long. But what could be the reason? That are we always defending the land? That's all. We have no responsibility that yes, the claimed LAC, the one which we claim, we are also supposed to go there. If he has done it at 3 places, as you are saying 20 to 25 places are there, I can do it at another 20 places. Why not?
No, Shailen, so this again is a slight misconception, क्योंकि हम सिर्फ Chinese transgressions report करते हैं, because we feel now they are crossing our line of actual control. But when our patrols are going to our LAC, there are areas where the Chinese say, yeah, you have transgressed into our area. So transgressions in that sense are happening on both sides. It is not as if we are only reacting to the Chinese and not patrolling up to our limits. This is like ceasefire violation. So you read Indian newspapers, it is always Pakistanis doing ceasefire violation. You read the Pakistani newspaper, they say it's only the Indians who are doing ceasefire violation. So patrolling is happening on both sides. And let me tell you, I will say 99% of the times, it is peacefully done. So last year, and this is reported in the media, there were almost 650 transgressions by the Chinese, which is they come in and they go back. They come in and they go back. Similarly, we do the same thing. Now 650 transgressions, did we hear even a single one which resulted in any crisis? So no. So there are border protocols for managing it. There is also an understanding on both sides that things should be peacefully resolved. Unfortunately, what is happening today is a complete variation from the way border management has been done in the past, and how both India and Chinese troops have been interacting and behaving with each other. So transgressions are not please only from the Chinese side. We feel they have overstepped. That Indian Army is transgressing into their area. But as I said, there are protocols for dealing with this. So it's not completely a one-sided story.
Great, sir. Sir, I was asked this question time and again, even by the Pakistani TV, by our own TV panelists from other places. क्या सही में सर 80 किलोमीटर अंदर आ गया है? Is it really possible for China to come inside 80 kilometers? Because when I'm explaining that to those people, they are prepared to retrieve, because I'm actually at a loss कि मुझे नहीं पता चल रहा और एक मीडिया पर्सन को पता चल रहा है कि 80 किलोमीटर अंदर आ गया चाइना और इंडिया कुछ नहीं कर पाया, पता ही नहीं कर पाया. Is it really possible?
No. So 80 kilometers and all is not possible.
Great,
See, there is some incursion in the Pangong Tso area, which is what we know. How much has been occupied, what they are doing, I mean, these are things which people on ground only know. So I think trying to put some kind of square kilometers and figures, I think would be completely sort of incorrect. And from what we can make out, see this whole area which is on the north bank of Pangong Tso is again one of those areas where there has been a differing perception of the LAC. So, and we all know now, Chinese used to patrol up to finger 4, we used to go up to finger 8. That used to happen. It was the understanding on both sides that nobody will permanently occupy this area because both sides were laying claim to it, and therefore to maintain peace and tranquility in the area, both sides would carry out patrolling, but not do a physical occupation of the area, which is what it appears to have happened this time. I hope the things get resolved peacefully and that the Chinese go back, and this is what the Indian army is also.
Great, sir, great. Now, I think it is more than clear that yes, if General Hooda sir says that it's just not possible for China to come inside by that kind of distances. A kilometer here and there, yes, one can understand. And sir, just for all professionals to understand, because this is also a little problematic, कि लोगों को समझ नहीं आ रही कि ये fingers का मामला क्या है. Just for everybody's explanation, as what you said, between finger 4 and 8. What are these fingers? These fingers are the land part which is extending into Pangong Tso. Those are the fingers we are, the land mass. Those are the 8 fingers we are talking about. Now, sir, since you are saying that we have a claimed LAC at finger 8, and they have a claimed LAC at finger 4, and there is a substantial distance between them. They have always been having their camp beyond what is that place? Sirija 1 and 2, sir, where they made that road during Kargil war. I was very much there to understand all this. My only question to you is, sir, how could it be कि वो अपने उस finger 8 से लेके finger 5 तक आ गया और मैं उसे finger 4 से ही सिर्फ challenge करूंगा? Why I could not go to finger 6 and 7 to challenge it? Just because कि petrol हमसे notice नहीं हुई? Or what could have been the reason? Does China have a strategic advantage in that region over us?
So Shailendra, it's very difficult at this stage to say what exactly happened, how did they come in. The fact is, if we want to go in some specific areas, we plan for it, we quietly build up in depth areas, and then suddenly send in 500 people into some areas, we can also do it. So it's not as if it's a completely, plain area, deserts that you can see for miles. It's mountainous terrain. And therefore, any side which plans and wishes to do something can always and has the ability to be able to do it. As I said, if we want to do it in some other areas, we can do it. And so therefore, I think more than asking questions about how did it happen, were we surprised, I think we should be more concerned about what the Chinese intentions are, what their demands are, and what are the steps that will lead to a de-escalation in this area. So I think that's the more critical question.
Sir, absolutely, absolutely. And sir, since you only said it, and which is a known fact, that such transgressions have been taking place earlier also by both the countries. Sir, what has been the traditional way to resolve it? That it has never reached a stage, the way it reached Doklam or for that matter now Pangangsu. Why we couldn't resolve it in those traditional ways, the way it was earlier? I want to know that how earlier it was not getting into such a big problem.
See, as I said, last year there were more than 600 transgressions. All of them went off peacefully. So there are protocols for border management between both sides. And these protocols stress that whenever, say, two patrols come face to face with each other, and this happens very often in areas where I said there is differing perception. They want to come and patrol up to their area. We want to go. Sometimes the two patrols will come face to face. There are protocols which say both sides at that time will peacefully disengage, go back to your own side. There will be no tailing of patrols. There should be no violence that is done between the two sides. If there are any issues that arise, that can be sorted out in what we call border personals meeting, where military commanders of both sides meet and then resolve these issues. This is the normal procedure and protocol that happens. Why has it not happened this time? It's because the Chinese have come in with some aims and intentions. This is not a normal patrol. That there is a normal patrol which resulted in some clash, and therefore then it boiled over into something. This is premeditated. The number of areas in which they have come in, the strength with which they have come in. So it's a premeditated thing, and therefore I think that's why I'm sort of stressing this fact that we need to sit down, talk to them, see what their intentions are, see what they want, what is it that will take it for both countries to de-escalate. I think we are clear on our side that they must go back, and we talk about restoration of status quo ante, which is if you have crossed into our area, the way to resolve it is that you go back. How soon that will happen, again, I don't think it is something that this time you're going to see be sorted out in a quick time frame. It will take some hard negotiations.
Great, sir. Sir, I have, oh yes, Anuma, you wanted to ask something.
No, I was just asking that अभी थोड़े दिन पहले 6 जून को जो लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल लेवल की टॉक्स थी सर, उसका बहुत हाइप था और वो बहुत लंबी भी चली, तो उसके बाद भी वो इनकंक्लूसिव रही. तो बेसिकली व्हाट आई वांट टू नो कि दोनों को मुद्दा मालूम होता है बिफोर द टॉक्स, तो वो प्रोसीड कैसे करते हैं सर? लाइक आप दोनों तो आर्म फोर्सेस आर्मी से हैं सर, मैं इंडियन एयरफोर्स से हूं, तो मैं ये जानना चाहती हूँ कि हाउ डू यू बिल्ड अप दैट टॉक?
Oh, so Anuma, what happens is again, this current situation is a little different from the past. So if you look at the past incidents, Chumar, at Doklam, Depsang, they were localized, and we knew on both sides what our demands are. We knew what the red lines on both sides are. Let's take Chumar, for example, in 2014. They were trying to construct a road. We said, you can't construct the road. Same thing happened in Doklam. They were trying to extend the road in the Dolam Plateau. The Indian Army objected. They went, they stopped the road construction. 2013 in Depsang, again, these people came and parked their tents there. We said, you have to go back. These were local incidents, and red lines on both sides were clear. What has happened this time is, I think the Chinese intentions are not very clear. And that's why there is a lot of speculation going on as to why have they done it? Why have they done it at this particular time? Is it linked to a local situation on the LAC? Is it linked to a regional level? Is it linked to Article 370? Is it linked to the greater superpower rivalry, etc.? So I think there is not too much clarity as to why they have done it. And that's why my sense is, what is their intent? What do they want? What will it take for us to step back? Is not going to be so easily negotiated. And that is why I'm sure, you see, we don't know exactly what happened in the Corps Commanders meeting. But it does appear, as is being brought out by the government, and yesterday the chief said, a certain amount of disengagement has started taking place. He said starting from the north, some disengagement of troops is taking place, which is good. I think the sticking point probably will be around Pangong Tso Lake, because that's an area that has a certain level of dispute which exists from the past.
So, are they exclusively behaving this way with India, or with other neighbors also they have the similar trends?
They're behaving like this with everybody, Anuma. You see what's happening in the South China Sea. See the way nationalistic fervor is being built up against Taiwan. See the incidents they've had with Indonesia and South China Sea.
But not
see
with
the
Russia.
laws.
Not with Russia, sir. They also have the borders, I mean, going into each other, and then.
No. So Anuma, it isn't as if you pick up fight with everybody, without any reason. So in South China Sea, China makes claims, and therefore they are in dispute with Vietnam and Japan and Indonesia, Philippines, etc., etc. And so there you find much more assertiveness that is happening. With India, there is an outstanding border dispute. There is a strategic rivalry, Anuma, between China and India, which I think we cannot paper over. We might say we have great economic sort of engagement, but the fact is there is a strategic rivalry with India. So you see what is happening between US and China. So I think it's greater assertiveness by China that is happening all over. We used to hear, in the past, they used to say, China is going to keep its head down till it grows powerful. I think probably it feels their time has come for greater assertiveness.
Sir, if you can give me a Abhay Dan, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, great, sir, great. With your kind permission, sir, I definitely know with a lot of responsibility, I say that a respected army commander post is as good as a strategic post in the country. And you definitely know for sure that yes, what could be the possible strategy of China behind all this? I can understand, to avoid any controversy or getting into, it is not our job as military to specify or speculate any strategy on the part of China. I can understand well that. But even keeping the confidentiality intact, what exactly, because as Anuma, others are also feeling same, what could have been happening in the military talks that it went unconclusive, which people are calling unconclusive? I'm very sure you will personally agree with me. They were never unconclusive. If we are having 4 more meetings, if they are having a withdrawal plan, all this is part of being conclusive. Yes, it didn't come out with a word that yes, it is happening, but it is all happening. So does a talk at that level become unconclusive?
So I'm glad you asked me this question. So what happens in military to military talks? And we've had a very large number of them. If there are minor incidents, we are able to resolve it quickly, and a number of such incidents have happened. When I think it reaches and goes beyond a particular level, and particularly where territory is involved on both sides, and we feel that they have come into our area, the Chinese feel, no, this is our area. When territories are involved, typically militaries are not going to retreat on their own or disengage on their own. So what happens in military level talks is that you talk to each other and say, let's maintain calm on the line of control, line of actual control. If you maintain calm and tensions go down on the borders, that actually somehow sets the stage for talks at the diplomatic level to become successful. Just imagine if, there was still sort of tension going on between both the armies and there was violence and injuries happening on both sides. That then, completely muddies diplomacy and how talks can go forward. So military level engagements will set the stage, will ensure that there is calmness on the LAC. If required, people will go down, as is happening, to areas on ground where tensions are taking place and have military to military engagements at those areas, which is again what is happening. So local commanders are now meeting at the places exactly where the standoff is happening. So I think it's good that military commanders are talking, making sure that the LAC remains quiet and peaceful. Troops do not start, firing, hitting, indulging in violence against each other. But when tensions have reached this stage, I think the final sort of solutions will lie in diplomacy, and where if diplomacy is also sort of not coming to a final resolution, then at the political level between political leaders of both sides. That's where I think it will get resolved.
Great, sir. So I think a takeaway from this is that yes, as far as military is concerned, it will put the foot where it is required so that that land stays with us very clearly. As far as the diplomat corps is concerned, they are the one who will start talking that yes, whatever steps somebody else has taken, he has to retrieve. But finally, the decision will come from the political side. Having said so, sir, now the same situation would be for China. Now, what is China aiming for on all three counts? Militarily, what does it want to prove? What does it want diplomatically? And finally, what could be their political aim for doing all this? Because as you very rightly said, I've been always saying that also, they must have had a plan to come. They must have had a strategy to come. They have not come here to just take a walk just like that and go back. So what could be the possible strategy for the China on all three counts? Sir, could you take my question, sir?
Yes.
I lost you in between, yeah. So we can just quickly repeat
okay,
the
sir,
question.
I'll repeat my question for you, sir. If China has come, it has not come for an evening walk, as what is very clear from your assessment as well as ground, the way it is. It has come with a strategy. And if that strategy must have been there, there could be only three part of the strategy. What does it want to prove militarily? What does it want diplomatically? And finally, what does it want politically? What could be their aim?
So I honestly don't know, Shailendra, because this is something that they will be putting out in talks between diplomats. I don't see such a crisis being created to capture 2-3 kilometers of space, across the LAC. For this to create a crisis of this magnitude, so I don't think there is any specific military aim. A lot of people are talking about, threat to this road, that road. I think those are really minor issues, and I don't think there are major. So the military moves are to put pressure on India. Now, what is it? Is it something that as I said, linked to local situation in Jammu Kashmir? Is it linked to a larger message to India that you are sort of aligning too much with the US and please don't go that side? Please don't take an anti-China stance. I honestly, Shahind, I don't want to speculate because this is something that over a period of time, as engagements take place politically and diplomatically, there could be some clarity. The bottom line is, this is an attempt to put pressure on India. It is, I don't think it's merely to do with, don't create this road, or, we want 2 kilometers LAC to be shifted towards, to the west. I think these are very minor things for a country to take the kind of step that is taken, and to create crisis between 2 large countries, India and China.
Sir, you are very right. As what we were discussing about Pengang, so I can actually find no tactical strategic advantage to China if it actually comes to Finger 5. It doesn't get anything tactically. It doesn't get anything strategically. So why are they there? Because it appears that, yes, I can understand Galwan Valley, they don't want that bridge to come up because they don't want an army to have a bridge over the river. I can understand all this. Like, sir, I'm telling you, I have had this problem of facing the patrol. And a very beautiful drill is that the moment you see the Chinese patrol in front, you raise your red flag, which has got written first, that is at a distance. Then you make that announcement through that bhopu. And the third is that, yes, if you still find that they are not going and you are also not budging, then yes, the company commanders come and they resolve it. So easy, so logical. But when such a thing has happened now, what could be the possible way out available militarily and, of course, resolving the whole issue?
So, Shailendra, I think, there are many options even militarily. A quid pro quo happening in some other area. So, if they have come in somewhere, you can always go in some other area. If push comes to shove, then a physical eviction of the Chinese is also possible. It isn't as if the Indian army is, not capable of doing this. But I think these military options are something that should be right now, off the table. If we can resolve this by diplomatic and military contacts and political engagement, and the Chinese go back, step back across to where they were as on 3rd, 4th May, before they started coming into our area, I think that would be the ideal solution and situation for both sides. Because once an escalation takes place, as they say, it's not easy, to control how it spirals from then on. And once, as they say, you climb the escalation ladder, climbing down is more difficult than climbing up. And so, therefore, I think let's keep the military options for now completely off the table, unless things just are not happening on both sides. But I don't think we'll reach that situation. If you actually see statements from both sides, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China and our own Ministry of External Affairs, they don't seem to sort of indicate that anybody wants this situation to be resolved other than peacefully. Both sides are saying, let's resolve it peacefully. So let's see. But as I said, it's not something that we should expect quick results. It's going to take some tough dealing on both sides.
Sir, no discussion. Yes, Hanuma, tell me.
Yes, sir. Sir, Shailendra sir, I just wanted to check with Huda sir that अगर ये stand off और भी लंबा खिंच गया, तो geographical location के कारण who is at the advantageous position, we or China? और अगर ये लंबा चला तो हमें भी किस तरह की मुसीबतें आ सकती हैं?
So Hanuma, कोई इतना let me say big deal नहीं है. So जो Pangong Tso area है, वहाँ if they have come, few kilometers from where they were into our area, it isn't as if उनको एकदम से बहुत important और बड़ा tactical advantage मिल गया. They have just, come another 2-3 kilometers along the river, along the bank of the lake. So it isn't as if वहाँ से उनको बहुत ज़्यादा approaches या कहीं और कुछ जाने की जगह मिल गई है. Similarly, in other areas, coming in 1 or 2 kilometers in any place doesn't give you a major tactical advantage. People are comparing, and some people are saying Kargil jaisa hai. It's completely not like what happened in Kargil. It's completely different situation, and where the Chinese were occupying, the Pakistanis were occupying important heights overlooking our highway, etc. That sort of situation does not exist here. So I don't see it giving a major strategic advantage to China over some future conflicts that might take place. I don't think that's the situation.
Sir, any discussion in our country would be inconclusive if we do not look at the Pakistan angle to it. My final question to you, sir, how do you see Pakistan gaining in this incidence?
Okay, so just before that, now that we are off China, one issue was raised about large number of forces which are deployed for border management and issues of coordination between them. So you will recall after the Kargil Review Committee, there was a group of ministers which prepared a report on our national security. And one of their recommendations was that we should have one border, one force. That means the responsibility for management of a single border should be that of a single force, and which is happening well at all other borders, except our border with China. So the international border portion is with the BSF. The line of control portion is with the army, and whatever BSF is there is under control of the army. The same thing is on Bangladesh border and border with Myanmar, etc. Clear-cut responsibilities for one force. On the LAC, technically the responsibility of LAC management is that of the ITBP. But most responses, because the army is in greater strength and obviously has greater capability in terms of firepower, logistics, etc., and because it's deployed fairly strongly, most of the responses to a crisis are undertaken by the army. All meetings with Chinese on the other side, border meetings, are all led by army officers. So here we have a very peculiar situation, two forces which are deployed, one reporting to Ministry of Defense, one reporting to Ministry of Home Affairs. I think it would be better if disputed borders remain with the army and settle borders with the MHA border guarding forces. And since this is an unsettled border, it should go, and this is my personal view, it should be placed with the army, and the ITBP units that are there should be placed under command of the army. What is also happening is because you have two different forces, each is doing its own capability development plan. So the ITBP raises its own units independently without reference to what the army capability is. The army raises its own units and formations without factoring in the ITBP. And therefore, I think it also doesn't make sort of economic sense to me, where you have two forces separately, managing the border. So that's one part. Coming to China, what will China do? Obviously, it'll attempt to take advantage. I mean, why not? China and Pakistan, very close relationship, very close links. Now with the China-Pakistan economic corridor, those links have got even further strengthened. After Article 370, was amended last August, you saw the kind of signals that came out both from Pakistan and from China. You see the latest tweet of the Chinese ambassador in Pakistan, who's linking what is happening in Ladakh to what happened on August 5th last year. So you will see Pakistan attempting to take advantage if our attention is diverted too much on the northern border, they would be happy to stir up trouble along the LOC internally in Kashmir. Something that they've been doing, and so I think we should expect them to exploit this opportunity in whatever way they can. How much they'll succeed, I don't know, because frankly, capability to handle both the line of control and the internal security situation is fairly strong in J&K. So there is no requirement actually of, if there is a crisis in Ladakh, that you will need to pull out major forces from Kashmir, etc., to tackle that. That situation is not going to come. But certainly Pakistan will try and take advantage.
That's a great assurance, sir. I'm completely running out of time, but I'll be doing injustice if I don't ask you this one last final question. What All India Professional Congress kind of organizations can do, what all the citizens can do for such cause, where they want to feel affiliated and be part of this mechanism, which is fighting China, or for that matter, Pakistan? That's my last question, sir.
I think it's, we need to adopt a bipartisan and a completely professional approach to this. Yeah, this is whenever there are issues of national security, which come up, I think everybody needs to get together and see how we can support whichever government is in power to be able to deal with that crisis. I mean, I think there is no other option. I'm not saying we should not completely question anybody, but I think at the end of the day, if we have to deal with a neighbor like China, it can only be if all of us sort of, put our weight behind it and see how we can resolve this crisis.
Great, sir. You have been very kind. I really appreciate your being so candid and honoring us with all the answers. Absolutely great of you, sir. I'm very sure anybody and everybody who have listened to this would have stood to gain and would have had a little more clearer mind than what the rumors are taking on. And I will request Hanuma to take on thereafter.
Thank you so much, Colonel Shalan Singh, sir. So we also have in our audience Mr. Prabal Dasgupta, author of the book Watershed 1967, India's Forgotten Victory over China. He has a question for you, sir. So Mr. Prabal Dasgupta, would you like to please come? I can see Mr. Dasgupta. I think his audio is not.
Jeet, can you please unmute him?
He will have to unmute himself.
Yeah, you can also do it if you want. I think.
We can go to the next question.
We have one question from the audience, and it is not a very military kind of a question, but it is how this emerging situation will impact Indo-China business, trade, and climate resilient actions. As altogether, we, India and China are around 40% of world population. We can do a lot. This is one.
We can. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we can. Ideal situation would be in India and China living in harmony, living in peace, great economic linkages. 40% of world humanity will progress. Unfortunately, geopolitics and international relations don't always play out like that. And one reality of international relations is that when there are two rising powers which are neighbors, they will always be in some kind of rivalry. I'm not saying war, I'm not saying conflict, but there is going to be rivalry. And particularly where one country has ambitions to become a superpower, it will try and dominate its region. That's the reality. Please look back into history. Look at Japan just prior to World War II. It was the regional power. They were in South Korea. They were in China. Look at America today. Does it have any rival in North and South America? See Russia during its great power times. East Europe was completely under its domination. So that's what the Chinese will also want. That if we want to become a global power, then we first need to be the dominant hegemon in the region. That's the reality. And that, I think, is a big challenge for India as to how we are going to manage it. The other problem I see us facing is that as US-China rivalry intensifies, you will see it playing out in the Indian Ocean. And therefore, for India to step back and say, yeah, we are just not concerned with what is happening in Indian Ocean is also not possible. So I think we will get drawn into some of this kind. This is going to be our biggest challenge coming forward, as to how can China and India rise peacefully. Will it happen? I think it will take a lot of management. I see a lot of competition that is going to take place between India and China. I wish it were otherwise, but I don't think that is going to happen.
Thank you, sir. Do we have Mr. Prabal Das Gupta again with us?
Anuma, he's just sending his question. His audio isn't working. As soon as I get his question, I'll read it out. So we can take in another question or two if Lieutenant General Hooda has time.
I have time.
Yes, sir, he's just sent in his question. If I can just read it out loud to you. Yeah, so maybe we can take the question from Mr. Prabal Das Gupta and then from Mr. Mohammad Anis Ansari. So Prabal Das Gupta, as you know, he's an expert on India-China issue and has written the book Watershed 1967.
We were together in a webinar recently.
Right. So sir, he's saying that we have 5-6 standoffs in the last decade, with China. So what do you think, at a broad strategic level, should be our takeaway from this particular one?
So I think we've had these standoffs in the past. We managed to resolve sort of most of them. I think the takeaway from this particular one, as and when it gets resolved, is we need to start re-looking at our whole mechanisms and protocols that we have for confidence building on both sides. I think that's the first thing to be done, because increasingly my sense is that whatever procedures, protocols were put in place, confidence building measures were put in place between the two militaries, have not worked as well in recent years. So I think that's one thing that we need to start looking at, just so that border incidents don't trigger off issues like this, and don't give an excuse, for example, to China that there is some infrastructure building, you are making a road. These are issues, frankly, that are to be debated and discussed in border personals meetings. The one thing that would completely help sort out the whole situation would be in case both sides can come to an agreement on the LAC. But again, I see that as a fairly difficult task requiring a lot of time. So I think these are two things that we could maybe look at, which could help our LAC management become more peaceful and tranquil, as they say.
Thank you, sir. We have Mr. Prabal Das Gupta's question in the question answer segment. Avni, are you reading it out?
She's already read it out.
It has been read.
There are more than one.
No, I think there's another question by Mr. Anis Ansari, sir. And he asked, sir, Mr. Ansari's question is, how is it even that a friendly country like Nepal is creating issues with India?
Look, everybody has his own national interest, and everybody has his own political constituency. So, and let us not assume that there have never been differences between India and Nepal in the past. We've had fairly good relationship. I think in this particular case, maybe diplomatic engagements on both sides, greater sensitivities to handling this issue could possibly have, led to things not reaching this stage. And again, I think here again, diplomacy is where the answer is. Some people say it's because of China that that Nepal is doing what it's doing. Listen, let's understand. China is our strategic rival. If we are not able to manage our own relationships properly with our neighbors, obviously somebody is going to step in and take advantage of it. But I think we should be able to resolve issues with Nepal.
Thank you so much, sir. Any other questions? Because more or less whatever questions we are getting from the audience have been already replied.
Anuma, if I may take advantage of my position to ask General Saab one question that has not been posed and which is very much on my mind. I'm sure it's on the minds of many people. General Saab, to what extent is social cohesion within India important, a sense of unity of purpose important, to ward off strategic thinkers in other countries like China, say Pakistan, because sometimes I worry personally that when others see India from outside, and if they see divisions, perhaps that gives them some degree of gives them an opportunity to fish in troubled waters. So to what extent is India's social cohesion important in projecting strength abroad?
No, Mr. Salman, what you said is completely right. So social cohesion is extremely important. Today, you don't have to go to war. What people are doing is exploiting divisions in society, creating echo chambers, exploiting any fissures that we have. And that in itself is something where, and particularly countries like China, who keep information as center point of their strategy, and who believe in things like propaganda and how information dominates all aspects of strategy. So I think for us, social cohesion is extremely important. Not only, obviously, it is going to be exploited by inimical countries. I think even the way social media is sort of driving, our thoughts and our processes. Again, if social cohesion within the country is weak, I see it creating more and more issues, as far as the country and its internal stability is concerned.
So with that, we have already completed our discussion, which was very gainful. And may I now request Prakhar?
So thanks for a wonderful session, General Huda, Colonel Shailendra ji, and Anuma ji, Avni and Salman sir. May I now request our Secretary, AIPC North Delhi, to actually come and give the closing remarks. Prashant? Hello? Prashant? Hello? Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, Prashant, please come and give the closing remarks.
I think you should do the honors yourself.
Yes, Prashant. There's some issue in your audio.
Is he muted? Prashant, can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Prakhar, I think you should do it because Prashant clearly cannot, is not audible. So why don't you thank everybody?
Sure. My special thanks to General Huda for taking out the time on such an important topic and coming to us and actually enlightening us with his important assessment of the situation that's at hand. And it's very important to actually listen to military specialists like these, and they come and say that diplomacy and politics is more important at this juncture. My thanks also to Colonel Shailendra Singh ji, Wing Commander Hanumacharya ji, who has been the guiding light and who has actually come here and managed everything with the permission of Salman Saab, Yogesh ji, Avni ji, Prashant ji, Shahbaz Saab and Roshan Santhalia ji. My special thanks to Yogesh ji and Manik ji as well for managing it. I'm sorry I forgot the name of Alim. And anybody whom I've forgotten, I'm already apologizing in advance. Yeah, it has been very enlightening, and maybe we can have more of these engagements. A lot of requests have come to us for specifically having such engagements for Nepal as well as Pakistan. Maybe we can have more in the future.
And on that note, can I say Jai Hind?
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, Aruma.
Jai